You recognize this, no doubt. These are the cost relationships. Let me draw in some revenue relationships. There's our demand, average revenue, marginal revenue curve. Won't bother labeling, and I know you know what it means. The first thing we spot, how many units is the firm going to produce? We can determine this by finding the point where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. They will produce this quantity. The difference between the difference between average revenue and average total costs, average profits. When there are economic profits being made in this perfectly competitive industry, startup companies will rush in order to gain the economic profits that are being earned. This will cause more units to be produced. It'll cause the supply to go up. It'll cause the price to go down, and when that happens, the demand curve will shift downward. We saw that in the last video, but what would happen if the demand curve shifted down here like this? Maybe down to here. There's the new demand, average revenue, marginal revenue. The firm is going to produce to that point where marginal revenue and marginal costs are equal. It's right there. We typically call that the profit maximizing quantity, but in this case I think it's fairly obvious that that's going to be the loss minimizing quantity. Here's the quantity that the firm is going to produce right here, but look, if we look at the difference between average revenue and average total cost, we find that average total cost exceeds average revenue, so that distance right there is going to represent economic losses. So the question arises, if the firm is sustaining economic losses, will it shut down and produce zero, or will it continue producing and swallow these losses? Here are the losses right there. There's total losses. In this case, as it turns out, it's going to continue producing and swallow these losses. Why? Because the revenue it receives, the total revenue, exceeds the variable costs. If the total revenue exceeds the variable costs, it will continue producing irrespective of the fact that it's sustaining losses. If total revenue does not cover variable costs, then it will shut down. If total revenue continues to cover variable costs, it'll continue producing even though it's sustaining losses. Let me show you why very quickly. Let me make a little table here. In this table I'll have total revenue, I'll just have we'll call it total revenue, fixed costs, variable costs, total costs, profits if it continues producing, and what it will happen if it shuts down. That SD there will stand for shutdown. Now let's say the revenue earned by some company is 5. Make it as easy on ourselves as possible, 5. Let's say the fixed cost is 2, the variable cost is 1, total cost obviously is 2 plus 1, 3. The profits, if it produces, is 5, total revenue, minus 3 minus total cost, which is 2. What will be the profits if it shuts down? 0? No, because if it shuts down, it's still going to have those fixed costs to cover. Those are contractual obligations. For instance, the lease on the firm. So if you shut down, you'll have no total revenue. You'll have no variable costs, but you will have fixed costs. And so if you shut down, the losses will be 2. We'll put -2 there. Okay? Now, let's see what happens in the following case. Total revenue of 5, fixed cost 2. Let's make variable cost 2 this time. Total costs will be 4. Profits will be 5 minus 4, 1. If we shut down, of course, we'll have our fixed costs to cover, -2. Let's do it again. Total revenue 5, fixed cost 2. Let's make variable cost now 3. Total cost will be 5. What will be the profits? 5 minus 5, 0. But what will happen if you shut down? Once again, you'll have those fixed costs to cover, -2. Okay, now here's where it gets interesting. Let's say that total revenue once again is 5. Fixed cost is 2. But now variable cost is 4. Total cost is 6. Profits, 5 minus 6 minus 1. But if you shut down, it's -2. Notice here that despite the fact that you are suffering losses, you still produce, because by producing, your losses will be less than if you shut down. Why is that? It's because your revenue is covering your variable costs. Your revenue exceeds your variable cost. This allows you to take a bite out of those fixed cost obligations. Now let's jump one and go to here. 5. Fixed cost is 2. Let's let variable cost be 6. Instead of 5, we're jumping from 4 to 6 there. Total cost, 2 plus 6 is 8. What is the loss if you shut down? Profits if you, what are the profits if you continue producing? 5 minus 8 minus 3. What happens if you shut down? -2. Notice here that it is prudent, financially speaking, to shut down rather than continue producing and taking those losses. Here, it's more prudent to take the losses rather than shut down. Notice the difference is when you take the losses rather than shut down, it's because your revenue is covering your variable costs. Over here, it's more prudent to shut down because your revenue is not covering your variable cost. Your revenue is less than your variable costs. So, if we turn back here, we can see that this guy's average revenue is covering his variable costs at that point of operation. There's average revenue. There's average costs right there. His revenue is covering costs. This box right here represents losses, but he's going to swallow those losses rather than shut down, because shutting down would be more expensive. If the demand were fall to say here, the demand curve, notice that he would not be covering his variable costs and would therefore shut down. We have one more of these little videos to go. Stay tuned.